Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike, your favorite show on the internet, or maybe not your favorite show, but we hope it is. I'm Courtney Mims, he's Mike Irwin. And Mike, you know, whenever I say like and subscribe, we get so many more likes on the video. So keep doing that. Keep liking, keep subscribing, and keep commenting, because we love reading through all your comments as well. And you guys get involved in the conversation as well, and we love that. So let's jump right into it. What everyone wants to know about right now, and that's going to be Razorback baseball. And the first question we have is from Razor Alex 88, who asks, can you tell that I've officially hit the panic button for Razorback baseball? Losing 2 of 3 to those A&M bozos is not acceptable. My confidence in them reaching Omaha went from near 100 to now 50%.
Okay, he's correct, and it's never acceptable to lose to A&M or Texas because they're all bozos. I think A&M is going to get, somebody's going to get to them, probably Texas. Their pitching is not good enough. That was the disappointing thing, that Arkansas didn't hit their pitching, because their pitching is fairly average, except for one reliever. They've got one great reliever. But as far as the chances of going to Omaha dropping because you lost a home series, look, Arkansas went undefeated at home in the SEC in 2021, 2023, and 2024. The last time they lost a home series in the SEC was 2022. Guess what happened in 2022? It's the only time they've gone to Omaha in those 4 years.
Yeah.
So one doesn't necessarily correspond with the other. Obviously, the last 2 years, they've gone undefeated at home and didn't get out of their own regionals, so it was frustrating. So I don't think this knocks them out of Omaha. But the frustrating part to me was losing. I think they could have won 2 of those games, and they just didn't score enough runs. But, you know, it's behind us. They've got to bounce back.
We're going to get into kind of that because our next question is on that, but I also want to bring up the point that they ran into a Texas A&M team that everybody kind of said, whoa, watch out for. You even said it on this show.
But I've watched these Aggies come back in this win hot streak they're on, and they've been pretty lucky too. A lot of
That's
things,
true. That's true.
A lot of good things have happened to them, just like Arkansas had a lot of good things happen when they were reeling off all their wins.
Yeah.
So sooner or later, it's going to go the other way, I promise you. That rain delay thing hit Arkansas in a bad situation, but they should have been able to hit those 2 guys that they were pitching, that they were batting against on
and we're going to talk about the rain.
Game 3.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the rain delay too, because that goes into some of the other questions on this game. And Hog Redneck says, I figured if we lost a series against A&M, it would be because our pitchers gave up double-digit runs. They didn't. We lost game 1 and game 3 because we didn't hit. When we did hit, we beat them. Yeah,
they scored 11 runs in game 2 and no problem beat them. And it's interesting because it's almost like when you're scoring a lot of runs, they score fewer runs. And they're encouraged when you don't score runs. Arkansas is averaging 9.6 runs a game. If they score 9.6 runs in all 3 of those games, they win all 3 of them. Yeah. They don't even have to have 11 in the other game. So the point is they scored way below that, and they did the same thing earlier in Georgia. They lost 2 of the 2 games they lost there. They scored low, like 4 runs, 3 runs, or whatever. So this is the issue, and I'm not sure what it is, but I do remember saying on this show that Arkansas's pitching is okay. It's not terrible, but if their hitting ever goes in the other direction, they're in deep trouble because that's why they were winning. Now, I don't know that this is some sort of a permanent thing. We'll find out. They need to hit well, obviously, against Texas, but that's what did them in, was not scoring runs. Anybody that wants to blame pitching on this, the pitching was good enough for them to win. And the one good thing that did come out of this, what was the one good thing that came out of this?
Gabe Gackle. Gabe Backle.
We proved once again what we were saying 2 months ago, that he's not a starting pitcher, that he's a reliever.
Exactly, and that to me is a whole other conversation that I don't know if we're even going to get into.
Regardless of the debate on that, now that he's back in there, I think that helps him.
I think so too. I think so as well. It's just you still have to.
You don't know what they're going to do with Gage Wood.
Right.
Because Van Horn revealed that he was only going to pitch 1 inning. Well, he only pitched 1/3 of an inning. And, you know, he's clearly not ready. He was clearly too nervous. I still think they ought to stick him in a midweek game and maybe let him start and pitch 2 or 3 innings in a midweek game just to see.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how they're going to handle that from here on out. I'm not convinced that Wood can't pitch well.
No,
I just think it was an impossible situation for him.
Well, it's tough to come back from injury as well and be thrown into a very high-stress situation.
Yeah, where you're facing one of the best hitting teams in the country, too. So there was a lot of factors that figured in there. So we'll see how Gage Wood does if he actually reaches a point where he can be that starter. But now what you know is that you've got Gackle now that can go long relief on any of those guys. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, that is a good thing. That is one positive if you can take a positive away. Cajun Pig wants to know, and this is a really good question because we talk about the hitting issues that this team has. What has happened to Iredale? Lately, he's been coming up empty in critical situations where we need to hit big time. And I think Dave Van Horn kind of alluded to getting some of these other hitters going in this lineup. And I think Iredale's definitely one of them.
Yeah, he was up hitting over 400 early in the season. Then he settled he was above 350 for a long time. All right. He was in the A&M series, he's gone 5 for 24 in these last 2 SEC series. That's 6 games. He's gone 5 for 24. That's a 120 batting average. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of good news there. In game 3 against A&M, he went 2 for 4. So maybe he's coming out of this slump.
Yeah.
What I saw him doing, and he's always been kind of a picky hitter. Like if you throw the ball down low inside on him, he can bring that bat down and bring it up. And man, he's home run city. But he waves off a lot of pitches. He looks off a lot of pitches that look like to me right down the plate.
Yeah.
And then he'll swing. He really tries to go after pitch. He either stands and looks at a pitch down low in the outside corner, or he tries to swing and he misses it. So, but you know, he wasn't batting 350, 360, 380 for no reason. He's a good hitter. I just think he's in a slump. All batters go into a slump. I'd rather him have the slump now than later.
A lot of people, I think, would rather have the slump now than later. You just hope that he gets out of it. And I like what you said right there in Game 3. Maybe this is the upside to it. But Dave Van Horn said in those post-game pressers, they have got to get some of the rest of the lineup going. And it's not that top of the lineup, he said. It's, throughout the lineup. So Axel says, don't know if you had a lot to do with this, but I'm going to give you credit for it, for getting the center field camera moved. It certainly makes a difference. The old location was a joke. And I'm going to give you credit, Mike. Not for getting the camera moved, but you said, I didn't know this initially. And so you this afternoon said, can I borrow the pig trail car? And I said,
went out and looked at what they did.
Yeah, so I said, Mike, of course you can borrow the car, and you went and looked at it.
Okay, this goes back 15, 17 years. When Baum Stadium was first built, ESPN in those days would televise maybe one of your games a year. Didn't come to a specific school very often. And so they just brought their own platform, and they would erect it themselves. Now, at some point after that, the U of A built a platform, but it was not done right. If you're looking out towards center field, it's too far to the left. It's way off line. What you want to ideally get when you've got that over-the-shoulder pitch camera is you want to be able to see either batter, and you want to be able to see the plate clearly so you can see where the ball goes over the plate. This thing is far off to one side, and especially with a right-handed pitcher, sometimes he blocks a left-handed batter. You can't hardly see the guy. And it's down so low that you don't see the plate. Now, sometime right after they came up with this ArkansasRazorbacks.com website for the U of A, I don't know if it was named that initially, but when they had their own website, they were trying to attract people to that website, trying to get people to go to that website. And somebody over there came up with the idea, what if we televise our games on that website? You could go to the website, click on a link, and you sit there on your computer and watch the games. You wouldn't be able to watch it on TV like you can ESPN3, but you could watch it on your computer. And so they started doing that, and I noticed that, and a lot of fans liked it. The problem was they didn't have a center field camera. They had 3 cameras, and what they would have had to have done is run a video cable out there permanently out to that center field location, and they hadn't done that. So they had an above camera, so it's a wide shot, so if you hit the ball into third base, first base, out in the outfield, you can see all that. And they had these tight shot cameras in the dugout wells off to each side for the close-ups of the pitchers and the batters and all that stuff. But they didn't have the standard over-the-shoulder pitch shot that every telecast needs to have. So I went to them not long after they started that, and I said, "You can't. This is ruining this. You need that other camera." And they said, "Well, we only have 3 cameras." And I said, "Well, how about this?" I said, "I don't like going over there and standing up behind there on that platform they have and shooting a whole game. And then what I have to do is somebody has to come out there and take my video out of my chip out of my camera and relay it back to the station so they can have the highlights, because I do believe that if they were doing it that way, you didn't have to wait till the game was over to have highlights, because it's not
televised.
It's not televised. So we wanted to be able to get updated highlights, but people were having to come out there and take that from me and making that loop. And back that time, I was working at a station that was all the way out by the mall, so it was a real pain. So I said to him, "Look, what if I'm already out there with the camera? Why don't you guys run a permanent cable out there, and I will be your center field camera if you will let me have that video that you're putting together that goes on the website." And they said, "Okay." So that's what I started doing. Well, I immediately started to realize out there that there were all kinds of issues with that platform. Number one, what I've already described. If you had a right-handed pitcher and a left-handed batter, you couldn't hardly see the guy. You can't see the plate very clearly. And there were some other issues. Right there where that platform is, wind comes a lot of times out and hits that batter's eye and just rakes across it. And you're sitting there you're sitting there trying to hold that camera, and it's shaking and all this stuff. And then if you're out there and it starts to rain, you're getting rained on, and there's all these problems. So I went to him and I said, "Look, you need to raise this thing up and move it right next to the batter's eye. And it would help if you would put like a top over it or something on one side to block the wind, because it's coming off from the left." And the answer I got was that Jeff Long said that if ESPN wasn't complaining about that platform, he didn't worry about me complaining about it.
Oh, okay, great. Oh.
So they didn't make a change, which was fine. I didn't think that I was so important that they had to do it for me, because I assumed ESPN would want it too. But apparently ESPN wasn't complaining about it, so nobody did anything about it. I mean, 15 years rolled by, and I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times on this show. I've mentioned the issue with that thing. But truthfully, I don't think most fans ever noticed it. Some did. Apparently this guy did. But he was watching the A&M game, which I wasn't, because I've got some sort of thing with ESPN going where I can't get ESPN3. So I only watched the one that was on Thursday. And I'll admit, I didn't notice it. I didn't notice the difference. But when he wrote this question in, I thought, well, let me go see.
Yeah.
And I went out there, and it's really cool what they've done. You've got the batter's eye, which is perpendicular like this to the ground. Well, you've got a slanted part that's back there that's runs back, and it creates a little kind of a cave in there.
Okay.
They put a platform up inside there, and then put a cutout where they can put a camera in there, and it's just on the inside the edge of the batter's eye. But it knocks off the wind, it knocks off the rain, and it's just a much, much better situation. And so I asked them, "Why did you do this?" And they said, "Well, we've been working on it for a while, but we didn't want a solution where we'd have to come up with another one and another one. We just tried what's the best thing we can do here?" And I give them a lot of credit. They've come up with something that I think, if you really start noticing it, you'll see a difference.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because now I'm going to look for it on TV. But I'm going to give you some credit, Mike. You've been saying that for a while on this show.
Well, I first complained to him about it 17 years ago. But you just have to be patient,
You do have to be patient, but I know you've been asking for this for a while.
I just wish they'd done that when I was out there and manning that camera, and the wind was about to knock it over, and it starts raining on me, Then it would have been better to be inside that little box that they've got.
No, they couldn't make it convenient for you back then. Now they can when you're not out there shooting.
It's
so
okay.
They're making it convenient for us watching it years later. But I'm glad.
It's really cool what they've done out there.
And shout out to Axel for asking the question and noticing it as well. Shout out to you for asking that question. WV Hog Fan says, USA Today ran a story about adding a buyout clause or buyout clauses to athlete NIL contracts. What are your thoughts about this proposal?
Well, I still think the best solution is what we've talked about, which is revenue sharing. I think revenue sharing is going to reduce the number schools that go in and try to take somebody out of the portal, because everybody's going to have the same basic amount of money for revenue sharing. So how are you going to steal somebody? It's going to be a lot harder to
Well, you're going to have other NIL opportunities on your campus
that's
or
the other
area.
thing.
Yeah.
There is NIL. It's still going to exist. I think it will be reduced in number. I don't think you're going to see $4 million and stuff like that. But you'll still have it. So for these NILs, I think it's an excellent idea, because what you're doing is basically saying, if we pay you, let's say it's $200,000. If we pay you a $200,000 NIL, you want to go to some other school, you got to give it back to us. So that school is going to have to give you that $200 to pay Arkansas back, and then give them the extra to get them to go there. And I think it's going to cut that down a lot if they do that.
I think we're getting closer and closer to my solution with all of this,
which is contracts.
Which is make them employees of the university. I know that everyone doesn't want to see that, but make these athletes employees so you can do what? Create a collective bargaining agreement
which will then also create contracts.
Correct. And that's exactly where I think we're going closer and closer to it, because now they're talking about buyout clauses. Well, you need a contract to do that. How are you going to get a contract? Make you an employee of the university.
Well, I think if you get a contract, you don't have that buyout NIL, because they don't do that in pro sports, and they need a pro sports model.
Right.
If you sign a contract with a team, until that contract runs out and you become a free agent, you have to stay with that team.
Right, but then you also have salary caps and things like that, and I think that's what they can negotiate if they are employees and they come up with they band together and they come up with a players union.
Absolutely. If you have a players union, they may have to agree that NIL goes away or becomes a true NIL.
Exactly, and that's where I think you're going to get the best solution here. I'm going to still say it. I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. Cowhog32 says, "I would like your assessment of Hunter Urchek. Overall, do you feel like the fans should be satisfied with the job he's done?"
Okay, I'm never going to say you fans should be satisfied with this coach, this player. I'm not going to tell you what you should be satisfied with. I'm not that arrogant. I can only give you my opinion. And then you can say, well, he's full of baloney, or I agree with him, and that's fine. So my assessment of Hunter Urchek is, number one, he's the first athletic director in the history of the University of Arkansas that's having to deal with the issues he's having to deal with. None of the others, Jeff Long, Frank Broyles, you can go all the way back, as far back as you want to go to these ADs. They didn't have to deal with NIL. They didn't have to deal with this new thing that's coming up, which we think is going to happen with revenue sharing. He's got to deal with all of that stuff. And what's made him unpopular with some fans is the raising of the donation requirements to keep your seats in baseball and then basketball. Yeah. And a lot of these people said, I've had these seats for 17 years and now I've got to give this money or they move me. You just don't get it if that's what you're, I realize it's your money, but are you there to watch a team that wins? Would you want to go and watch, keep your seats and watch Arkansas lose in baseball and basketball? Because if they don't have the money for revenue sharing, that's what's going to start happening. And that's what he's had to deal with.
And it's even more than revenue sharing, because what else are they proposing is more scholarships.
More scholarships for baseball, for sure.
Right, and obviously Dave Van Horn wants that to be competitive with some of the other teams.
I think that's going to add like $2 million more to the budget.
Yeah, 2 or 3 million more.
So you have to do that. The other thing you judge an AD on, to me, and I've always said that, is who does he hire? What's his ability to hire coaches? Is he good, bad, average, or whatever? Well, we know that he's done 2 things. When he hired Eric Musselman, that revived Razorback basketball. That was not a small deal. That was a big deal. And Musselman was kind of under the radar at that time.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it at the time. When he was announced, I think people were like, oh, Eric Musselman, what's going on here?
Right. So that worked out really well. And then when Musselman stayed his required 3 or 4 or 5 years, which is what he does, and then when he goes somewhere else, it looked like Arkansas might be out of luck. And then all of a sudden he pulls this rabbit out of his hat, thanks to Johnny Tyson, but you got to give Urchek credit too. And they convinced Cal to come here, and that's arguably one of the biggest hires in the history of Razorback athletics. So right there, I'm going to give him an A for all of that stuff. Now, the thing that's a lot of people hold against him is Pittman. And, you know, he did hire Pittman. They're saying, well, he could have had Lane Kiffin. I don't believe he could have had Lane Kiffin.
You still don't believe that, yeah?
No, I believe Lane Kiffin was in a bidding war that Ole Miss was eventually going to win. So I think he took a guy that convinced him, hey, I want to do this. I'm all in on it. I'm gonna do everything I can to help turn the program around. And he did really well the first 2 years. Had that bad 2024 season, I think it was, 23 season. And then the last 2 years, he's on his way back up a little bit.
We'll see. Remains to be seen, right? Because,
It remains, but there are some people that still don't think he's capable of doing this. But what I would say to that is, if you're Urchek, I do not disagree with his philosophy on that, which was, instead of taking this money and buying Pittman out and then having to come up with a big cash wad to bring somebody else in, and then we don't have any money left for the program, how about we save this to bring athletes in here?
Yeah.
So
and also give him another year to say, okay, look, we're going to put you in a better situation, right? We're going to put you in a better situation. If you can't produce after that, bye-bye, right? But I'm going to put you and set you up for success. If you can't do it then it's a failed thing.
That's been the criticism by a lot of fans, that he should have been gone at the end of last year.
I understand that criticism. I get it. I understand how fans feel there, but I also think you bring up a great point. If he's the AD and having to worry so much about setting Arkansas up for success with money, that's a huge point that you have to bring into it.
You cannot afford to be what A&M, even A&M now realizes how stupid they were to give Jimbo all that money and then fire him, because they're going to be paying this guy even with the money they've got. It's a real drain on what you're trying to do.
It's crazy to me. And again, you're seeing this all over the country with different schools too.
I absolutely think that this money that is now going to athletes that previously wasn't, that I think is going to change the picture of firing coaches. It's going to be, athletic directors are going to be much more reluctant to fire coaches because of the buyout they have to pay.
I agree.
And which then impacts their budget.
I agree with you. I mean, but you look and you look at other ADs who are making decisions. I go back to UNLV with their hires recently for football and basketball, and there was that story that came out about Dan Mullen and how they were like, well, we can't really pay his salary past a certain point of time, but it's okay, we'll get that money. And you're like, as an AD, I would be like, oh my gosh, we're going to take that chance? We're going to take a chance on that?
That's what you have to do, and it can really backfire on you.
Exactly. So I get where the criticism of Hunter Urchek is, but I also appreciate you, Mike, for saying that you can't tell the fans how to feel. You can feel however you want as a fan.
You can say he's crazy. The guy should be fired, and then Urchek has not done it. And then it was really Johnny Tyson that brought. You can say he had nothing to do with it. Anything you want to say.
Sure.
This doesn't mean you're right, but I'm not going to tell you can't feel that way.
But that's your opinion as a fan. You're allowed to have those opinions as a fan. Popular Porkster asks, as we switch over to the basketball realm, how big of a loss is Ament to Tennessee? I heard they're giving him an insane amount of money.
Well, the insane amount supposedly somewhere around $4 million.
That is what I was told.
Which is crazy.
Which is insane to me. Insane.
Now, to me, if they had decided to pay him that $4 million, who knows? Tennessee might have gone up to $5 million. But
if they did, that's even crazier. Sorry.
But if he had said, okay, I'll come to Arkansas for $4 million, then here's what basically happens: you probably lose Wagner, so now you're down to one true point guard instead of two. You probably also you might not have ended up with the shooter scorer that they're trying to get. They're still trying to get a guy that becomes next year's Nellie Davis and hopefully scores more than Nellie did and hopefully won't be injured. But someone who can shoot from outside and someone who can score. And they may be bringing in two guys like that.
Maybe. We'll see. I mean, there's been some names thrown around like Chad Baker-Mazara.
Here's the other thing. When Cal got on TV about a week and a half ago and talked about he was keeping these four key guys here, you know, he wanted to keep the four key guys.
Well, three right now.
Three, but we think Carter Knox is just testing. He's.
I mean, I'm 99% sure the man's coming back.
We'll talk about that in a minute. So. But the point is, when he said, I'm trying to get these core guys to come back, he didn't do that by going, we'll give you what you had last year.
You only get $1 million. That's it. Nothing else.
So it costs to get Billy Richmond to come back. It costs, to get all of these, get Brazil to come back. To get these three and then hopefully four, the core, you want a core group of guys to come back. Well, it costs to do that. So I just think Ament would have messed all of that up. And you have a different opinion of him than I do. My opinion of him is you've already got a guy just like him, but is more physical. You could stand those guys up next to each other, and I guarantee you, we don't think of Brazil as being some physical specimen, but he's bigger. He's bigger and stronger than this kid is. That's coming out of high school, and they have a similar game. And I would just rather take the fifth-year guy over the one-and-done guy.
Well, Mike, I don't disagree with you. The whole point I was making a few weeks ago was you were asking one or the other. I was like, well, I don't think it's a bad option to have both, right?
If you didn't have to pay $4 million.
Well, now I changed my opinion, right? I'm looking around. I'm going, I'm sorry, he wanted how much money?
Right.
No wonder Arkansas and Duke says, y'all can have him, Tennessee.
Keep in mind, Duke kind of let him go too.
Absolutely, because I don't think Duke is willing to pay $4 million for the kid.
So then answer me this. What's up with Tennessee? Why were they willing to give him $4 million?
Well, because if you've been following the portal news, Tennessee has whiffed on a couple of big guys. So, hey, they didn't get the guys they wanted. So, hey, we have a little bit bigger pool of money to play with right now. And, hey, we need a big splash.
And it could work out for them. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm sitting here trying to picture this guy coming in and being a major factor at Tennessee and getting them to win the SEC next year. Mike, I don't see it.
Mike, I saw a tweet the other day. I think it was on Friday or Saturday, whatever it was, and it was like Nate trying to go up against SEC bigs and forwards, and they're like pushing him around, and he's like running out of the video. So I agree with you there.
He's not going to have to play inside. He's not going to have to bang inside because he can float around. He's like Brazil was when we first saw him. He can float around the three-point line and shoot, and then occasionally go up and do a dunk and stuff. But you're just not going to get the best of him in a one-and-done situation. He's not worth $4 million. I will tell you right now. I've seen the guy. He's not worth $4 million.
Mike, I don't think he's worth $4 million either. I totally agree with the situation of Arkansas and Duke if they were like, yeah, no, we're good. We're good on that. And who knows if it's $4 million? It could be, like you said, 4.5, $5 million. We don't know. I was told that his price tag was $4 million, and they said, bye-bye, we're done. We're out.
Duke did too.
And Duke did as well, exactly. Hot Dogger says, I think it's a testament to Cal that we only had one loss to the portal. And honestly, let's be honest, Mike, I don't think it was, I think he was even said, hey, you can go in the portal. You're good.
Big Z has got to. This was good for him. He gets to go play with his brother.
With his brother, exactly.
They're very similar type players, and I think he'll do better there than he did here.
Exactly. So again, I'm going back to Hot Dogger's question. Sorry for that little break, but I think it's a testament to Cal that we only had one loss to the portal and Big Z. Looks like the guys are good with sticking with Cal, and they are what Hog Nation needs next season.
Well, they were good with sticking with him, but they didn't just stick with him because, you're a good guy. We're going to stick with you. He paid him money.
You're a good guy, yeah.
He paid him money. And they went, okay, we'll stay here. You've compensated us, and we feel like this is okay. And yes, we like you, and we'll stay here. And what do you get when you get that? You get guys who are part of a team that went to the NCAA tournament and reached the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
That's experience. That's next year when you go into the tournament. That's experience. You have a bunch of guys that are in there for the first time. You got 4 guys on there. If Carter Knox comes back, you'll have 4 that were there last year with this coach, with this team, in this situation. So, I just think that's the biggest thing he did.
Yeah, that worked out. UConn figured that out. UConn did that. Danny Hurley said, if you go and ask every college basketball coach right now, and you can go ask any of them, what is most important nowadays to win in college basketball? Retention. Keeping guys in your system, but developing them, having that experience. And it's also going out, and what you need from the portal is also experience. And we're going to talk about what Arkansas did and going out in the portal so far and getting that experience. But I think it's also huge for another reason. And this is maybe more of a fan reason. What was one of the biggest reasons we heard last year from fans why they weren't totally bought into this team in the beginning?
Well, because you had all these new guys, and they were getting. I knew they were getting a lot of money, and they were complaining and saying they just got their money. They don't really care. They're not bought into being a Razorback.
Exactly. Well, now what do you have? You have guys that are coming back for another year. DJ Wagner. Carter Knox. If he comes back. Billy Richmond. Trevin Brazile. Trevin Brazile is hog all the way. If you can't say that already, you can now. But I think that's good for the fans as well, to know that, gosh, we loved DJ Wagner last year. We loved Billy Richmond last year. Billy Richmond was a fan favorite last year.
He was. They liked him.
They liked him. So I think that's good for the fans as well. So don't give me any excuses why you're not showing up to Bud Walton Arena. Don't tell me it's because you don't know anybody on this team, okay?
Yeah.
KY Hog asked, and we're finally going to answer this question instead of darting around it. Is Knox coming back or not? Around here, there's talk that he wants out and is staying in the draft. Well, you're in Kentucky, sir. We're going to talk about that. If that doesn't work, he'll jump into the portal. Tell me that's not true. We need him.
That's not true.
That's not true. No one has said
He's
that.
not going to hit the portal. Now, I can't say that he wouldn't stay in the draft if he got all kinds of positive feedback from these NBA scouts and the people that are watching him. He might. But this is very common. When you are looking a year ahead in the draft and you want to make sure you're a first-round pick, you go work out in front of these guys and they tell you, they might not tell you directly, they might tell your coach. They might come back to Cal and say, okay, he needs to do this, this, and this. And then Cal will tell him, this is what you need to work on. This is what we're going to do with you this year. And so that's why we think he's coming back, because the whole plan here is to put himself in a position next year where he can be a first rounder.
Absolutely. And I think it's also good for these players just in their camp. I've talked to multiple players about this that go, look, sometimes it's just that we want to see what they are saying about us and get that feedback so that they can go, okay, these are the things we're going to be looking for you from you next year.
Yep.
And so that's a totally common thing. The way Cal talked about it, too, in that video, where he's like, I fully support that he's going to test the waters. I think that, again, I've been told he's coming back.
Yeah.
I think it's 99%
We'd be
barring
totally
something.
shocked if he doesn't.
I would be very shocked if he doesn't come back. But I think that's also when you look at what they're going to do with the roster here, he's a factor. He's still being included. He's still a factor. And I think that's another thing, too. You've got to pay Knox to come back as well, right, Mikey?
Yeah.
S. Giles wants to know, what do you think of UNM Pringles? Seems like everybody is assuming that they're going to dominate the front court. Why?
Why do people think that? I think that's what she's asking.
Yeah.
Why do people think that? With Pringle, I think a lot of it had to do with that game at Columbia, in which what did he score? He scored
that was one of his best games of the
18 points
season.
and 9
Yeah.
boards. Now, Arkansas targeted him for that SEC tournament game, and they held him to 3 points and 4 rebounds. If you look at what he did all year, he's definitely more of a defensive threat than an offensive threat, but he can jump up. If you don't watch him, he'll score on you.
And he's very physical, too, if you look at how much his free throw rate and how much he got to the line.
Yes, he gets to the free throw line a lot.
He's physical, yeah.
But what I think is good about this is that both of them together, what they do, because you've got one is more of a defensive threat and the other is more of an offensive threat. Because Ewan is a guy that he's just fun to watch. He's got for a big man, he looks like a guard.
He acts like a two guard. I mean,
Yeah.
goodness gracious. You look at his assists, Mike. How many centers in the country have the number of assists he does? It's crazy. A good passer and he's a center?
He can go do a reverse over-the-shoulder backdoor layup off the backboard.
Yeah.
He does crazy things.
He has options. He can drive inside for the bucket, or he can pass it off, and he has an ability to see the floor, so he can make good decisions. You could have fooled me by telling me he's a center. If you would show me his stats, I'd be like, it's a guard.
Yeah. So he can do all of those things. Now, that supposedly the knock on him is that he's not a very good defensive player.
He's not that great at defense.
Well, I read an explanation for that, and it had to do with Florida State's defense, where they shift a lot.
They do switching? Yeah, they do switching, yeah.
And it said he just didn't do it overwhelmed him a little bit, I got to shift here, wait a minute, I got to shift there, and he just got caught. If that doesn't work with him, I guarantee you Cal won't be doing it.
Mm-mm.
And plus, you'll already have another big out there, either Brazil or I think Pringle is going to be out there with him at all times.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to have one guy out there, one big out there.
And Pringle, like you said, to be fair, he's really great on defense, so that can help.
So
you there.
that's why people are so excited. And then finally, I think they realize that if Cal says this is what we needed, what are you going to do? Go, I think he screwed up. I mean, you're going to second guess this guy with all the experience he has in recruiting and bringing players in and having them because you can criticize him even at Kentucky for some of the things that happened, but you can't criticize the player development there. No. He brought players in and they were good.
And I think he can develop, when you're talking about a guy like Ewan, he knows that they need to get him better defensively, but I think that's something that they can do with him, that they can develop him there and make him better there. What they can't teach is just how awesome he is as a center offensively. So
he's going to be a lot more fun to watch than what we saw this year.
On a bad Florida State team, I think he's going to be a whole lot better on this one.
Especially when you got he and Brazil in at the same time with what each of them can do.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine the assist to Brazil assisting to him?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, man, this is going to be.
Or even to Pringle.
Yeah.
So
I think these are two great additions for him. And then you talk about both of these guys as well. What was the number one thing Cal said he wanted to go get in the portal is rebounders. Both of these guys can rebound. So that's another thing, too, where it fills that hole. And I think, you got to trust Cal. You got to trust him that he knows what's going on and who's going to fit his system.
You know what Ewan's shooting percentage was, field goal percentage?
What was
right
it?
Right at 60%.
I'm telling you.
I mean, if he puts it up, there's a good chance it's going in.
Yeah, you definitely got one that you liked more on offense and one that you liked more on defense, but that's okay. I think they're going to rise to the occasion there. Whippersnapper asked, and this was a question that was asked all over social media this weekend. Yeah. Why no spring game?
The official explanation from the athletic department, the football program, was that there was rain in the forecast and they didn't want to take a chance on people showing up and it raining all over them. I think Pittman mentioned that the whole thing about the spring game was mainly for the fans. We want them to come out and watch the game and have a good time, but if it rains, nobody's going to show up. So we don't want to have a spring game with 500 people sitting in the stands.
Or less than that.
But there's a problem with that, and we'll go on to the next question, and we'll address it.
Well, I do want to also mention in there, because there was a lot of people putting blame on the meteorologists all over, all of the local meteorologists here, but Dan Scoff gets calls from the university, and he did advise the university. He did tell me, he goes, look, I don't want the blame to be on the meteorologists here, because we said there was going to be a window from that time that there was that to play the game. So do it. Now we're going to get into this. We're going to have more questions here, but I think you're alluding to why the heck did they cancel the autograph session as well? Because that one I'm still scratching my head over since it was supposed to be indoors, so don't understand that one. Eddie Lynn wants to know, did Pittman cancel the red-white game on purpose? He said he believes spring games are important for the fans, but he looks like he chose, but it looks like to me he used the excuse of rain as an excuse.
You'd have to be standing around when he was talking over there and when he made that decision, and you'd have to be as Petrino and some of these other coaches to know the answer to that question. But it's suspicious. Because
it's suspicious.
If the local meteorologists tell them, hey, you got a window from about noon till about 4 o'clock, you can play this game, yeah, it's okay. And then you go, oh, it may rain and we're going to cancel it. That sounds goofy. It sounds like you're not sincere. Here's what I'm going to say about this. If he just said, we're not having a spring game, and he should have said it early on, because as long as the portal, and some coaches did this, some head coaches made this decision.
Yeah, multiple programs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said, look, as long as the portal is the way it is, where as soon as spring's over, you got this portal, and we got people out there playing in front of a bunch of people, and any coach Lane Kiffin can send his little guy over here, and he can wear a hat over his head, and nobody knows who he is, and he's sitting there watching the thing. They even said you could shoot with your cell phones, what they said. But he can come in and watch these. And if there's a guy that they think, hey, he's probably not a starter, but he's pretty good, let's steal him.
Yeah.
So if he said, look, we just want to prevent that, I think people would have accepted that. This is what sometimes Sam Pittman does. He gets himself in trouble because he doesn't say what the actual motivation is, when he should just say it.
Yeah.
Or
if it's because I heard somebody say this to me. They said, look, Courtney, the field conditions weren't ideal. And also, if you're talking about a field...
Chance of injuries?
A chance of injuries. They were like, what if Taylon Green got injured in the spring game? Exactly. How would everyone feel about that?
So you could say that. You could say, even if it doesn't rain, we've determined that the field condition, after talking to our grounds crew,
it is not ideal.
That would have been a much better explanation than what you got.
Yeah.
What you ended up doing is making a lot of people mad at the weather guys all over at the 3 stations.
Exactly, but not only that. You had an autograph session that Pittman said in his press conference.
Could have done that indoors.
You could have. That is my whole thing. If you're doing it for the fans, truly, he said, look, if we don't have favorable conditions for the red-white game and no one's going to show up, we will do an autograph session.
Let me tell you what I think is really going on.
Oh
here.
gosh, okay.
And it's not bad, but I can see where he might not have wanted to say something about this. They ended up. Right now, I think it's 4. They got 4 portal transfers over the weekend.
They did, 4, yeah.
And I'm thinking that if the coaching staff had to deal with the red-white game and deal with all this stuff, they don't have as much time to spend with these guys. And all of them said, every one of them said, yeah, when I came in here and I was around the coaches and I got to see what was going on, they're not so much interested in all this stuff, the game and the fans and all that. They want to know other stuff.
Yeah.
And he was able to spend that much time with them and get them to come in. So again, just say that, say we're going to try to be doing some portal recruiting during that period, and it's going to take away from what we're trying to do. So I hope you understand, but this is the way we have to do it right now.
I also think that would have been respected. It's hard to justify, especially even when Dan is forecasting Monday, Tuesday, hey, weather's going to be really bad Saturday, or whatever he's saying. At least give the fans a heads up. Go, hey, we may not be able to do a red-white game, but we're definitely going to have that autograph session inside. And just plan for it.
And to be honest, Dan was telling them as of Friday that they could still play.
Yes, he was.
They knew.
He came in here multiple
times. I think the coaches wanted to spend that time recruiting.
I think so too. And
honestly, I think the players went back out on Sunday because I saw some.
Really?
I saw on the internet a couple of those guys posted on Sunday that showed them at the stadium. And it said our last whatever, it's our last spring thing. So that hadn't been officially, no one's officially said that's what they did, but they're posting this stuff.
Well, maybe they got pictures from another practice and they're posting
it was our last one, and they were at the stadium.
Oh, I'll have to look into that myself. Yeah. I don't know, but I also think it's very convenient as well. Personally, to me, it's just with the portal right now, I get it, why you don't want to have a spring game. I get it. So just be honest. Just be honest.
Just say why it's not a big deal.
That's what I would do. And listen, I might have been on the train of, listen, guys, we're not going to do a spring game because we don't want any of our players poached. Yeah. I think every Arkansas fan would have
We don't want any of our players hurt.
Absolutely. All of those things are things that I think you could absolutely understand. Instead of coming for Dan Scoff and saying it was his fault, it's definitely not Dan Scoff's fault that the spring game was canceled.
If they had that spring game and the weather had been perfect, I bet you there weren't more than 3,000 people watching it.
Yeah,
that's been the history of this lately.
I know. I have always asked why the spring game wasn't a bigger deal at Arkansas, because look at South Carolina's spring game this past Friday night.
Huge.
They had like 30,000 people there.
Right.
What? How are you drawing like 30,000 people for your spring game? That's awesome. So how do we get that to be here? How do we do that?
You have to win more games.
That's all right. I knew you were going to say that.
You have to have fans thinking. For instance, if they win 9 games this year and they've got the makings of a really good team coming back, they might win 10 or whatever, then you get people excited because hey, we don't watch this.
30,000
Well, we've had 45 before at certain spring games if you go back far enough. Okay. But I think there has to be a reason. You have to be curious. Okay, I think they're going to be really good next year. Let's go out and watch these guys.
Hey, I'll respect it. If that's the answer,
I don't think right now, even if they'd had that spring game, they would have had a big crowd.
I don't think they would have had a big crowd either. H.L. McCamish wants to know, how would you rate football's portal additions so far? As we've said, there were 4 that they got over the weekend. You can read more about them over on our website right now. Otis Kirk does a great job covering all of that. The numbers on these guys are impressive, but not a single one of them played in a Power 4 conference, Mike.
Yeah, well, Sam Pittman has a history. This is one of the positive about this guy, because he does have a track record, and his staff. They have a track record of going and finding mid-major type players, even to a Division II guy like Isaac Tesla.
Yeah, or an Andrew Armstrong.
Andrew Armstrong, who was a low mid-major. And you bring him in here, and Armstrong becomes an all-SEC wide receiver, one of the best in the country. And we on our draft thing we did, our podcast on the draft, I talked about how if people think he's a sleeper in the draft, that whoever's sleeping on him is nuts because this guy's good.
Yeah.
But I just think you can. It's so easy to look at where they came from and ignore their numbers. They've got a linebacker. I think he had over 100 tackles last year. Yeah, he was at Kent State or somewhere.
Yeah, it's Kent State, yeah.
Okay. But he still made over 100 tackles. And you can't just assume that he can't do that when he goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
You have to wait and see. I'm not saying this is a great portal addition, but when I was taking a look at what they've done with the offensive line, they bring in the kid from Georgia Tech. They do these pass blocking grades, and he had, I think, the highest pass blocking grade in the Power Four of any offensive tackle in the Power Four. So he's now their left tackle.
Yeah.
And that's been a problematic position for this team for a couple of 3 years now. Okay, so then you move Fernando Carmona to left guard. Then they brought in from Florida State, from UCF, they brought in a center.
Yeah.
And they're real high on him. Now they've got this guy, McRoy.
Yeah, Shaq.
McRoy from Oregon, who's 6'8" and 360 pounds. And he can move. Now, I've watched him and still dragging a little bit sometimes, but they're going to try to keep working at him, get him in better shape. But if you listen to Carmona, what he was saying is it's only a matter of time till he moves over and takes that left tackle position. If you've got two big guys like that and you've improved that offensive line, and then what do you do with Taylon Green? Now he's got time. Now he's got time to throw the ball, look for receivers, not take off and run. Every 1,001, I got to run. So there's reason to believe that because of Pittman's ability to use the portal and develop players out of the portal and go and find guys not from Power 4 schools, big name guys, that are going to cost you a whole lot of money, but maybe a moderate amount of money and you get more guys, he's done a pretty good job. I thought he did an excellent job last year. They went from winning 4 games to 7, and that's not, in this league, that's not nothing. I mean, people were so mad they didn't even go to a bowl game in 2020.
Well, yeah, that was
24 or 23. And then in 2024, they not only go to a bowl game, they win it. So there's certainly evidence to suggest that you can complain about Sam Pittman in some respects, but what he and his coaching staffs, the way they have used the portal has been excellent.
And I'd have to look at the transfer portal rankings, but I believe this class, the transfers they brought in, the class ranks higher than they did last year, too.
It's significantly higher.
It's significantly higher. And you look at some of these guys, even though they weren't from Power 4s or whatever, one of them was a highly wanted recruit in the portal, that it was big that they got him, because Otis was telling me, and you can go back and watch his recruiting report this past week, because he goes into exactly how these guys will help. But one of them, he said he was ranked highly in the portal.
He was a cornerback.
I think he was the cornerback, exactly. I think 4th, he was like something like that.
Fresno.
I think it was the Fresno State. Oh, well, Jacob, we got Jacob on the side here. He did our Arkansas football recruiting report. Who is it? Julian Neal, 4th ranked, 5th. Top cornerback, 5th ranked portal guy.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Just because he didn't come from a Power 4 school doesn't mean he's not highly rated.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. That was my point. Thank you, Jacob, for always helping us out. I appreciate that. Shout out to Jacob. And hey, go watch his Arkansas football recruiting report with Otis Kirk. He has more great stuff there. All right, our last question of the day. Trackman says, and I love the name, by the way. I think this guy likes track and field, right? Would you say that?
You would think so.
Yeah, you would think so. Trackman says, Jordan Anthony just set a school record in the 100 meters, first to run it in under 10 seconds. Do you think he will ever play football for the Hawks?
I think there was one other Razorback years ago that went to the Olympics and finished second might have finished second to Usain Bolt, and he ran like a 9.89 or something. That's the record for a Razorback, but he wasn't a Razorback at the time. So Jordan Anthony is the first Razorback sprinter to break 10 seconds in the 100 meters while he was a Razorback. Now, what's he going to do? Well, he hasn't said, I'm not going to play football. But Sam Pittman, in in a press conference that he did before it ever started, said they might not get him back if he had a great year. Jordan Anthony said after he set that record at Mount Sac, he was being interviewed, and he said he talked a lot about the frustrations of previously being injured and how that affected his track career. Now, you told me you don't think all of those injuries were football related, but some of them were. And also, when you're trying to split time between two sports, it takes away from you.
Yeah, Coach Buck mentioned that to me when I asked Coach Bucknam about Jordan Anthony and said, wow, he's getting better and better. And he goes, yeah, can you imagine what it would be if he spent full time in track? It hurts him to go back and forth. So he's never going to unlock his full potential if he's also splitting time between football.
So would having him on the football team help? Probably. He's really fast. Might get hurt. We don't know. They've already got a guy they feel like is a really good punt returner, and I think that's one of the things that, Jordan Anthony would be. He would be a receiver. They're loaded with receivers. He's not tall. We know that Taylon Green doesn't tend to see shorter receivers. Ooh, where is he?
Because he's a tall quarterback, Mike.
Right. So I just think this might be, if he stays with track, it might be best for both sports.
I also think there's another thing we should talk about here when people ask, because there was a question about would Arkansas, obviously Sam Pittman has said defensively, those are the guys he wants to go out and get in the portal, right? He said 5 defensive guys is what I want. They got 4 of those. They're still looking at a defensive tackle, I think, from getting out of the portal. But the question was asked, are you going to get another receiver maybe, someone on the offensive side of the ball? And he said, where'd you hear that from? He kind of was coy about it. But he said, look, if the money stretches and we have room for them, okay? So right now, he said, if we have a guy leave, that opens up a space. But right now, they're very full on scholarship players.
Exactly.
I think if you go and look at, I can't remember who went and actually counted up scholarship players, but it's like they're at 90 scholarship players right now. And so they have to have some guys leave in order for them to bring someone else in. The guy you would look to leave in that wide receiver room would be maybe Jordan Anthony to open up that spot.
A lot of people may not know this, but if you play 2 sports and one of them is football, it has to count as a football scholarship.
Yep,
that's an NCAA rule to prevent schools from loading up and getting more football scholars by saying this guy's in track or this guy's in basketball when he's really not.
When he's really not, exactly. But I think that's a good point to make when we talk about Jordan Anthony in that situation, to look at what he does, because that would open up a spot to bring somebody in from the portal. And I think it's something that, honestly, he might have talked to Pittman about and Coach Buck about as well and said, look, I can be really utilized in track to win another national title.
So moving forward, I think things are going to calm down a little bit from here on out. We're covering
baseball
and softball, right?
Yeah, that's what we've got right now.
Once we get this basketball thing settled, and it should be in another week or two.
Yeah, we should know a roster pretty soon here. I wouldn't say another week.
Now, I think there will be some interest as these guys come on campus this summer. They will be kind of working out on their own, and Cal will probably have a press conference at some point and talk about the new guys or whatever. I don't know if he'll give us access to them, but there'll be some of that available in the summer. But mainly now we're just going to be focusing on baseball and softball, right?
That's exactly.
And softball's coming on.
Yeah, coming on big time, I would say.
They had a perfect game pitched.
A perfect game by Reese Berline, and
they have the big home run hitter that's just knocking 20. What's
Bree
she have?
Ellis?
21 home runs.
22.
22 home runs.
22 home runs on the year.
What's the lead? Who's leading Arkansas baseball? It's like one of the Sousas, right? With
I think
12.
no. Well, not one of the Sousas. You mean one of the Aloys?
One of the Aloys.
One of the Sousas.
I call them the Aloys, all of them, Alohas.
The Alohas, there you go, that's it.
Sousa's out.
Sousa's out, so I'll have to look at that because I don't know who's leading.
I think it's 11 or 12.
I think you're right, but she is 22. 22.
Whack.
Yeah, she just got a golden ticket, too. Shout out to Bree Ellis. She just got a golden ticket.
Explain a golden ticket. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the AUSL is what it's called, the Athletes Unlimited Softball League. It's a newer softball league. One of my friends, actually, Savannah Collins, who I went to university with, works for them. And she came to Fayetteville to hand out that golden ticket as well. But a golden ticket basically says you're one of 8 collegiate players who have been chosen across the country to basically say, you are getting drafted, absolutely. You don't know which team just yet. That'll be decided on May 3rd. But the golden ticket says you are in, you're going to be playing in the AUSL because you will definitely be drafted on May 3rd.
That's good.
So very, very exciting for her. So if anybody wanted to know that, there you go. A bonus question for Ask Mike today, answered by Courtney Mims. That's going to do it, though, for this week's questions. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of them.